I'm not pressing the right button.
It's good to blame OBS,
yeah,
because you're usually right if you blame OBS.
Oh, the wrong button. Good morning, Matthew. Welcome to Geeks on Screens with Coffee. It is the 19th of June, and it's
6:17. Good evening.
Or 10:17 in the morning. Good morning, Matthew. Welcome to Geeks on Screens with Coffee.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Mark and Matthew in the morning.
Morning. We should have timed that better, but hopefully it will work.
I don't know if that's coming through, but love if anyone's online as a reference to community. Oh, we've got about 4 people watching on YouTube already.
And hello to Laura and Mary. I see the comments in chat. I can't read the comments in chat, but hello and welcome.
Hello. If you have any, I would say if you have any questions for Matthew. So do you prefer Matthew or Matt or?
I do prefer Matthew. I am
Matthew.
Relatively obnoxious when people call me Matt in most circumstances. My mother can get away with it, but pretty much nobody else.
I apologize for my gross informality.
It's all good.
So just as an introduction, I first saw you. You could introduce yourself, but I think people are probably watching because they know you. They're not watching because they know me. I can't remember the year, but I think you remember the year. It was my first power hour at SQL Bits. Someone said, you've got to go to there's this thing called a power hour. They don't record it. What do you mean? They record everything at SQL? No, they don't record it. It's really good. You've got to go. Okay, all right. I'll save you a seat at the front. Okay. So the room was one of the largest rooms they had there. Mm-hmm. And it was packed and there were people standing.
Yep.
And I think all I can remember is you ripping your shirt open.
So this was 2015. It was the first SQL Bits that I had ever attended or participated in. And at that point, I had just joined I had been on the Azure Data Catalog team. So I was a PM working on the first version of Azure Data Catalog, that service that preceded Azure Purview, which is in market today. And I had actually like terrified anytime that I'm like traveling internationally, there's like different people in the crowd, not everybody's going to speak English, nobody gets the same references, that sort of thing. But I had been tag teaming with Matt Mason, who is currently a developer on the Power Query team. He and I knew each other from our SQL Server Integration Services days. So like he played a big role in my getting my first product team job. And the Power Hour was the relaxing session for me. I'd done this hard pre-con and a couple sessions that I really had to prepare for. But I love the Power Hour because it's informal. Everybody gets to build their own demos, and they're designed to be stupid and not business appropriate, which is why we don't record it, and often why it results in the big room with the full crowd.
Yeah. Or even if they do something daft. I think at a past summit, they chose. It wasn't a lot. Well, I think it only fit. I would say it wasn't a large room. It probably only had 150 people in it. And I think that was another power hour where I saw Chris Webb and someone else do something.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Matt Mason. I went to one of his sessions on how he was using machine learning to find friends.
Yeah, that was an early BI Power Hour session. He was using SQL Server Integration Services to manage his friends network because he was so popular. After he was doing his BI or bi dating demo that he'd done during a previous one, and every year, so since it was Matt that had invited me to join the Power Hour lineup. And I've, it's been part of my regular conference cycle since then. So I love it. And I'd like to think that I'm pretty good at being the MC. But it was Matt that sort of paved the ground for this session as it exists today. And every year I reach out to him saying, it's like, hey, we'd love to have you join us. And every year he has other things going on. So maybe next year, if there is a next year.
Well, I mean, there will be a next year. Whether there'll be a conference like that, who knows?
Or human society. Yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll worry about next year.
Yeah, yeah. This just getting to tomorrow is sometimes hard enough. Next year, it will sort of just happen, won't it? Yeah. So, I mean, I've been stalking, researching, stalking. I'm not sure which is the best term for it. I was watching your session on your superpower, which you did was that for Women in Technology session?
Yep. So Mala and Kathy from the data platform Women in Technology user group, like the online user group that has an ongoing series of events last month, which is, I don't know if this is an international thing, but at least in the US, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And since I've been public for the past few years about some of my mental health struggles and like the challenges and I guess progress that I've made because of those challenges, they reached out to me asking if I would submit a session. And this was probably for me the favorite presentation, like the favorite thing that I have done this year, because it really felt like genuine and valuable and something that, like for like the technical stuff that I do, I'm not an expert on anything. I do a lot of stuff and I like to think that I have a valuable voice. But if I'm blogging about data flows, there's someone who has worked with it more in the real world, or somebody on the product team that has the deeper technical perspective. But for that superpower session, it felt like I was the only person that could do it. And it really felt like it was like the sweet spot.
It was. I mean, the only thing that I would have loved is to see your face bigger, because it was only in the corner. But it was. I mean, I was watching that last night about midnight, and I couldn't stop. It's one of those. There are some sessions you can just put down and you go, oh well, I'll pretend that I watched it. But that was certainly something that you couldn't get away with. I did notice how you did mix your Marvel and your DC superheroes.
I also threw in like My Hero Academia, like some of the Japanese stuff. But for the record, I am the Marvel fanboy, or the like younger Matthew was the Marvel fanboy. I still have the entire run of Chris Claremont X-Men comics. And I want to say like the first 300 Doctor Strange, because he was my favorite Marvel superhero back as a child in the 80s. So that's the collection that I still have upstairs that at some point I will sell. But the DC stuff for me, so for those who didn't see the session, I essentially talked about how some of the struggles that I've had, both with anxiety and depression, and with some of the currently undiagnosed autism spectrum behaviors that I live with every day, how it has both presented challenges in my personal and professional life, but also how it has enabled me, just because of how I've learned from these challenges, I can do things that no one else can do. And in my current position, like, not only am I in a position of safety and privilege so that I can talk about this publicly without, fear of retribution or repercussions, but in my current role, I have found the team and the position where the things that I do better than anybody else are exactly what the team needs, and it's valued and it's recognized and rewarded. So this is like the sweet spot. And the DC reference, it was something that I had gone back and forth on. It's like, do I include this? Because I thought about the Marvel DC thing and this being like the one odd thing out. But the idea of Superman being a kryptonite delivery boy in a past life. So this amazing, powerful, like the ultimate powered hero, where if he's there, nobody else matters, right? Like Superman shows up, all the problems go away. Thinking about him spending months or years working with the one thing, like the one weakness, and he's got to feel miserable. He's got to feel like he's got to feel powerless and worthless and awful every day. And when you think about, there are so many people where the thing that they need to do is the thing that is incredibly hard for them, but may not be as hard for someone else, because like Aquaman or whatever can carry kryptonite around without it being a problem. It's just a Superman thing. A lot of my earlier tech career, like the first 7 or 8 years at Microsoft, maybe, a lot of the things that I needed to do to be successful were things that were just very, very difficult for me because of some of the mental health challenges that I live with. And you never know it until it's gone. Like you never recognize the weight until it's been lifted. But I hope that someone watches that video and says, oh my God, it's not just me. And that someone is empowered to make a change or to have a conversation to make their lives better that they might not have been able to do before that session, before hearing that story.
I mean, even if they don't fully resonate with everything, some of the practical things you've talked about is something that I've taking notes during the meeting, because you won't remember them after, right? I mean, it sounds really daft, but that's, I mean, if I don't do that, I will forget them, and a lot of the time I will just be enjoying the meeting, or I will be participating in it, and I'll just, oh, it was good. What was decided in the meeting? I think I had to do something. Let me just find out if someone else remembers. So there was some it's not just like we've got an issue. There was actually some really good advice on kind of how you get around that. Yeah, maybe not for everybody, but it's certainly valuable. But no, I was joking about the DC reference.
It's all good. So here's the joke. This is a slightly off-color joke, so this is your chance to let me know if that's not appropriate for this conversation. But my wife and I walk around our neighborhood, like a 20-minute walk every morning, and we'll often just talk about what's top of mind. And for this particular session, the picture, like the slide that I had, was from the Justice League movie, and like one of their poster shots. And I told her that I was thinking about, before getting to the Superman thing, also making an Aquaman reference, where I had told, I was going to say, I'd always thought that the Aquaman's powers were about like talking to fish and swimming real fast. And with Jason Momoa playing Aquaman in this new movie, I've been informed by a lot of friends that his actual superpower is making things wet. And my wife told me, no, that is not what you're going to put in this session. And I edited it, but I still think that it's funny.
It is funny. I mean, when my wife said, because she doesn't like superheroes, but she was interested in seeing that film, I was referring to Aquaman as Seaman.
And your wife appreciated that reference.
I wasn't looking, but yes, yeah. Sometimes it's best to run away, drop the bomb, and run away quickly, because she can throw things.
That is very good. So my wife and I actually met in fencing class back when we were at university together, and I had been the teacher's assistant for a few semesters. So I'd like Dungeons and Dragons nerd growing up, and the State University of New York at Oswego, so the state school up in northern New York where she and I met, there was a fencing instructor who had like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class and a Tuesday, Thursday class. And my wife, who is a theater tech major, had a professor who basically said, if you're working in theater, you need to know how to fence, because sooner or later there's going to be a sword fight in a play or what have you. And you'd mentioned your wife throwing things, so you need to be careful. My wife, so I'm 6'3", she's 5'3". She was this amazing, feisty, aggressive fencer, and like instantly fell in love. And at one point, she ended up, thrust lunge, right in the cup, and she's
Okay.
so I end up like curled over, hands below the waist. And she's like, oh my God, are you okay? What can I do to help? And I'm like, you could go out with me to a movie. and the rest, as they say, is history. So worked out pretty well.
That is quite a nice segue into, I mean, what would you call it? The armaments, the weapons on the wall behind you.
Yeah, so they are either sword simulators or something similar. A key characteristic of an actual sword is that its edges are sharp. Everything that's on the wall behind me is designed for safe sparring, so you can hit your friends and still have them be your friends. So where in the UK are you based?
I am in Norfolk, so in sort of the east side. So
Okay, so London is a bit inconvenient to get to from Norfolk.
that there London is a bit far away. Yeah.
So I was going to say you should check out the London Longsword Academy, but maybe not them. But there's this activity known typically as historical European martial arts, or HEMA, where it's essentially people that have found the original historical, like medieval or later manuscripts, where the fencing masters of the day, they documented how to fight with swords and shields and spears and daggers, armored or unarmored, on horseback or on foot. And just as today we have technical manuals talking about the right way to design a database or implement a network, they had these beautiful manuscripts with pictures and or written instruction, basically saying, if you're in a situation like this, do these things. And the modern HEMA movement got going in the 80s and 90s, where people had rediscovered these. They translated them into modern languages, because typically they're in Latin or medieval German or medieval Italian. So they translate them. And then they said, well, hey, we've got these instructions, and we do like, karate or kung fu or the living Eastern martial arts traditions that are much more common. So let's try to translate this and apply what we already know about fighting and what we are learning from these books. And it's turned into both a true martial art and a just fantastic combat sport. So there's tournaments around the world where, and let me grab one of these. So there's tournaments around the world where you can, with a like roughly 4 foot, maybe 2.5 pound, well, get this down here so you can see that it's kind of rounded on the end.
Yeah.
So I can stab you with this, and it's not going to go through you, both because it's flexible and has a lobed tip, but also because you're wearing modern protective gear, and we could spend like 5 minutes in the ring, go up to whatever the points are depending on the rule set of the tournament, and kind of like a mix between Olympic style sport fencing and a karate or kung fu tournament. There's a real risk for injury. So I've broken my hand once and have had lots of bruises and so on. But for the most part, it's the exception, not the rule. But it's the most fun that you can have without going to jail. So of all the things I miss during the pandemic, I miss violence the most.
I mean, we all do miss a little bit of violence, don't we?
And friendly, consensual, informed, participatory violence with a trained and fully engaged partner. It's like you don't get much better than that. And
do you find your height then makes you a bigger target because you've got a larger body area to hit?
So no, because generally, if you are bigger in a fight, you have a physical advantage. So I'm 6'3". If you're 5 foot, whatever, I can hit you before you're close enough to hit me. And the weapons serve as an equalizer. So this is something that's called out in a lot of those manuscripts, where basically saying if the strong person always win, then it wouldn't be an art. But it is an art. It is a martial art. But as a general rule, I have an advantage, which means that so I'm bigger, I'm stronger, and I'm relatively fast. So I've got good reflexes for this sort of thing, which means that I can sometimes make mistakes and still win or still land the point or avoid a point being made on me because of that advantage, which often means that my learning curve is more gradual because I can mess up and not get that immediate feedback of getting like stabbed in the face or what have you. And there's this one guy at my club, and Callum, if you ever watch this, I miss you desperately. He's at least 6 inches taller than I am, and he's probably 20 or 25 years younger than I am. And he's like really great guy, but he's fucking huge, right? He's like, he's 6'8", 6'9", like relative, well built, solid, athletic. I absolutely adore fighting Callum, because I know that every point that I make, every hit that I land, I earned that. And on the other end of the spectrum, there is this amazing young woman named Beth, who also fights at the same club or trains and practices at the same club. She's maybe 5 foot. So she is tiny, but I have been punched in the face by her more than I have been punched in the face by every other single person in my life combined. And everyone is taller than her, but she's like a bulldog. She'll look for the opening, she'll get inside your measure, and once she's here, you're done. And she practices more, she puts in the effort, she's fantastic. But the swords do balance things out a little, but you still need to know what you're doing.
So do you practice then with just the one weapon? Because if it was real warfare or whatever, well, as in, so you would actually maybe have two, because if she was fighting you, she would try and get in as close and quickly as possible, because she's inside your reach, and then then use a smaller sword, a short sword, or a dagger to finish you, or dispatch you.
So yes, but no. So when you're in a fight, if you have to change weapons, you're already screwed, because that person is not going to wait for you to put down one thing and pick up another, or pull out something from your scabbard. If you have like a dagger in your belt, that might help you, but you're in a bad place. Like kind of like if you look at World War I or World War II military history, anytime that you have to pull your sidearm, it's because your defenses have been overrun. Like the machine guns and the artillery, all the big things have failed. So you're in a world of hurt if you have to draw your sidearm. The same kind of pattern applies there. And for most modern competitions, so if you're in a tournament, most tournaments are set up so that each competitor has the same category of weapon. And it's like, longsword versus longsword, or saber versus saber, or rapier versus rapier. There are historical styles that do include multiple weapons. So it's pretty common to see a tournament that is rapier and dagger, or sometimes rapier and cape, because those are historical styles that we have like surviving manuscripts for. But typically, if it is something like spear versus dagger, or some asynchronous mismatch weapon, I've gone to a couple charity tournaments where they do things like that. Like they roll a 6-sided die to see what weapon you start with.
Okay.
Like it's a ton of fun, but it's generally the events where you're coming in to fight for the pleasure of fighting, not to take home a tournament or a medal, the thing with the person. You know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about?
some sort of trophy. Yeah,
Trophy. Thank you.
yeah. It's yeah.
And and let me mention one more thing as well. So this is my birthday present to myself. So I talk about these two swords being, these are my pride and joy. So joy is a Oakshot Type 10 arming sword, like one-handed sword, and pride, which was my birthday present to myself, is a, let me get this here. I assume that no one is going to be able to see the rainbow bluing in the fuller. So if you look in that fuller groove going down the blade, it's like this beautiful rainbow color. It's like a product of the heat applied to the steel. But not only is this a different type of sword, notice that in addition to the blade, there's also this rounded pommel on the base. The pommel weighs almost as much as the blade does. So this is what, gives us the nice balance point and allows us to move this, multiple feet of steel. So if I'm doing my job when Beth gets in close to me, as she's coming in, I will push her hands aside and I will smash her, I will pommel strike in the face, because it doesn't matter that it's not sharp. If you get hit in the face with 1.5 pounds of steel with a 200-pound dude behind it, that's a bad day.
That's a bad day for anybody.
Yes. And the pommel strike is one of the favorite things to do in a tournament against an uncooperative resisting opponent, because it's a way to show that you've managed their motion and the distance. It takes the planning and the setup to pull it off.
Oh, I see. It's one of those, almost like a showboating maneuver of, I'm that much better than you. Bop on the head.
Or yeah. So a lot of the historical techniques. So let me back up a little. A lot of modern tournament fighting is very sportified. So the things that work when you're trying to touch your opponent with a blunt sword to score a point, they are different things that would work if you were trying to cut somebody's freaking arm off and kill them in an actual fight. So that sportification means that a lot of what you see in a modern HEMA tournament is like, tippy, tippy, tappy, tappy, not to be confused with clicky, clicky, draggy, droppy. But it's a lot of little tippy things. And when you see someone who pulls off an actual historical technique in context, the crowd goes wild. It's one of those things like, oh, he set that up and he did it. It shows not necessarily being better than the opponent, but it shows the skill and the application of the knowledge that comes from the type of research and study and practice that the community as a whole claims to value, but the tournament scene doesn't reward because of the rule set and the nature of the combat. So it's a little complicated. I'm geeking out on the other things, on the non-technical things here.
No, that's fine. It's because it's something I don't know anything about. It's one of the great things about doing this is that I get to learn all this stuff about stuff I have no knowledge about. So no, geek away. It's really, I mean, I've seen some stuff in the UK, and and there was a local tournament, where they had fighting, and there was a whole army of at least 12 people, maybe 24 fighting, and almost like the ballet-esque, choreographed kind of, it would have, I think it was Vikings, because we're in the East, and, they came over, had some,
they did come over, didn't they?
And they had some fun, shall we say.
So how far away are you from the Stamford Bridge, and have you visited there for the site of that classic battle?
I had no idea how far away I am from Stamford Bridge.
Okay.
It's
fine.
Look it up. Sorry,
I'm not disappointed in you.
I feel I've let you down. I've let myself down, and I've let everybody watching down. I'm sorry. It's
I'll give you until 2066 for the anniversary to figure it out. So talk to me in 44 years.
okay. Good. That gives me a little bit of time to catch up.
Perfect.
I mean, is that a nice segue into your Twitter handle? And
I think that it is. Yeah. I hadn't planned it that way, but it could definitely work.
you're the SQL All Father. And I know you have some ink, but we don't need to go into any of that. Where did that is that an obsession? Would you call that, or was that just a research thing? Or
So I think that it's a little bit of both. It's something that I kind of fell into. So for the folks watching who may not be aware, Allfather was the title of Odin, like the prominent character in Norse mythology. So Odin was the father of a lot of the other gods, and in the early 2000s, I started my own software consulting company. So I'd gone solo basically because the company that I was working for at the time was kind of collapsing around me. And even though, one young child, another child on the way, at least in the US, you can't take things like health insurance for granted, but staying where I was felt like the high risk option. But with a little bit of thought, I founded a company known as Integral Thought and Memory, where thought and memory are the English translations of Hugin and Munin, the name of Odin's two ravens. And if you think about how Odin and his ravens behaved in the old tales, he would basically send these two ravens flying around the worlds of gods and men, and they would spy on things. They would return to him and whisper into his ears about what they'd learned. And he always had this strategic advantage because he had superior intelligence. And this was kind of the spin that I took. And keep in mind, this is younger Matthew, small market, et cetera, et cetera. But this was the spin that I took on positioning business intelligence as a consultative offering back in a time and a market where having a BI reporting solution and data warehouse was absolutely the exception and not the rule. And it fit. It felt like a natural thing for me. So we kind of ran with it. And 10 years ago this month, so just interesting timing here, when I had just joined the integration services team, and Matt Mason again, so it wasn't my intent to bring him up again and again, but I'd gone to Matt and basically said, it's like, all right, now that I'm on this team, where's the community for this? Like, how do I engage with the MVPs and the consultants and the user groups and so on? And he said, oh, well, it's mainly on Twitter. Twitter is where I usually go. So I went there. I had to create a handle. In those days, SQL Server was the primary Microsoft data platform offering. So all of the cool kids had SQL something, like SQL Bob or SQL this, SQL that. It's like, hey, SQL Allfather, it wasn't taken, but again, it fits. It feels like a good fit for me. I am not a young man anymore, and one of the things that Odin brought to his context was the wisdom that came from experience. And although wisdom, experience does not convey wisdom. Age does not. There's a quote that I'm trying to remember. Yeah. So age does not convey wisdom. Age conveys experience from which the wise may draw inferences. And I don't claim to be wise, but I've seen and done a lot of things, and like to think that I can be a reasonable voice in the community on occasion.
Okay, has nothing to do with you spending. Is it 12 days on the Tree of Life? I'm trying to remember. The World Tree.
So it was 9 days, but it felt a lot longer.
Okay.
And let me tell you, if I never have meat again, it will be too soon.
Oh, really? Okay.
No, it was so.
You have to tell
basically. Us. No, in Norse mythology, Odin traded his eye for a drink of mead. As part of the whole hanging upside down from the world tree thing, but But no, I do not have a self-image of having sacrificed myself to myself to gain things. Although now that you've mentioned it, all of the awful, stupid things that I've done in my younger life, I could probably spin that into a self-sacrifice tale, given enough effort.
Well, you do. You make mistakes and then you learn from them, and
Yeah.
it's you only know how to drive a car well when you have driven it over the edge and you didn't die in the accident.
Yes. Or in any event, until you've screwed up badly enough for it to really register.
Yeah. When you drive in the snow, you put your foot down on the brake, and when the car keeps going and just starts twisting in a strange direction, you think, maybe I shouldn't have driven so fast. It's you from experience, maybe a little bit of wisdom comes, but yeah, not necessarily.
Yes, I know that guy as well.
Yeah, I had my daughter moan at me that I don't drive fast. I drive like an old man now. I don't drive quickly anymore.
Did she have any hypothesis for why that might be?
No. I'm just clearly an idiot. Yeah, and an embarrassment to them. But
I was saying to one of my kids a couple months ago that the joy of not being young anymore is that I'm not in a hurry. So, I'll drive the speed limit or above, but I'm not going to be the guy zipping in and out of traffic trying to get there like 2 minutes earlier than I otherwise would. If I get there late, they'll wait for me, or I will miss the first 2 minutes of the movie or whatever it is, and you plan to avoid the rush.
Yeah. The one thing about that Norfolk is known for is its tractors. The only time I was late getting to the airport, late leaving the house to go to the airport, I got stuck behind 3 of them, and it was a lesson in humility of leave just half an hour early. Just give it a bit more time. Don't be an idiot. If you miss the flight, no one's going to die. No, it's not that important. I was going to ask you, we're sort of running out of time. I wanted to make sure that we didn't run too far over. I don't know. I didn't ask you whether you had a hard finish.
My schedule is very flexible. We'll go as long as the conversation dictates.
I did want to ask about the picture on your top of your Twitter handle. Which is, well, to me, it looked like you were sort of recreating Wanderer Above the Sea of Fog, which is a famous painting. It's not because I'm arty or clever, just because I'm not. It's because a comedian I know recreated that almost in a similar way, standing on DVDs, and he was using that as a mound. The DVDs that are like £1 that you get in charity shops of other comedians and his own.
Oh,
material.
that's funny.
Yeah,
that's funny. So nothing as clever or creative as that. February 2015, I was visiting friends in Ireland, in Northern Ireland, and basically I was up at the Giant's Causeway, which is this basalt outcropping on, is it the North Sea that's up there? So whatever sea it is that's up at the top of Northern Ireland, there's this fantastic collection of these hexagonal basalt columns that come up out of the earth, and apparently it is normally like swarming, just covered with tourists. So every picture that you take is 1,000 people in it. But the morning that we were there, which was the only morning that we could possibly make work, it was like just pouring rain, like high winds, tons of clouds, rain coming down. So there's maybe 2 or 3 other people. And as we got down to the shore, the wind died down, the sun came out, the rain stopped, and it's like, this is the best day. And because that and the thumbnail picture that I use for my avatar or whatever Twitter calls it, those are literally the only pictures of me that I have ever seen that I have ever liked. I use them for Twitter and LinkedIn and for my work profile and so on and so forth. So it's a good thing.
I've just seen a someone put something in the chat saying, "Is this is this about Power BI or the human condition?" And I'm not sure if they're joking because they might have tuned in thinking they're going to get you just telling them about the great new stuff in Power BI, and we haven't. It's about
Haven't
you.
we mentioned Power BI yet?
We talked about the Power BI the Power Hour. But that was tangential. Do you know what? I was so flustered at the beginning. I forgot to do a couple of things. So we forgot to like sync sound and vision with the clapperboard. I know it's a bit late, but I've got to do it. And everybody gets their name in letters, which is kind of. I'm trying to do that for both cameras.
The C is turned sideways. You have a U in the middle, so you might want to turn that, rotate it 90 degrees to turn it into a C.
There we go.
There you go.
So sometimes the letters have fallen down, and it looks a bit strange.
That's very good. I had once dreamed of having my name in lights, but having my name in child's magnets, that's even better. I feel like I finally made it.
I mean, no expense is actually given in this. And the last question, I mean, I think that was like most things. Oh, there was one thing I was going to mention from that talk that you did. In the UK, there was there was a TV series called Raggy Dolls, which was a children's TV program about these imperfect toys that get thrown away because they're not, they've got some problem with them. They're missing an eye, or one of their heads on backwards or something. And that just made me remind myself, oh, that's how I used to think of myself. Because we're all made slightly and there was a nice little song. We're all made imperfectly.
All right. We're all made uniquely, and others might perceive that as imperfection. But I am the perfect me. It may not be the perfect what you need, but I do me pretty well.
I am a person. I don't mean to. I'm not even a good person. I try. Yes, you're right. I do me. I don't even write my notes in clear text. That's probably, I should type them out next time. All right. The last thing we do is a question from the emergency question book. This is written by a comedian. It's 1,001 questions in here. You pick a random number, and as long as it's not too rude, I then read it out.
So let's go with, between 1 and 1,000, I pick a number. 137. So 137.
Why 137?
It is the ID3 code, or specifically the ID3 V1 metadata code for the heavy metal genre. So if you did anything with MP3 files in the 90s, the ID3 is the little metadata header that is part of every MP3 file. And in the V1 format, which is very compressed and long since deprecated, they had a 3-digit code for genre.
Yeah. I was listening to some. You just reminded me. I was listening to some Man of War earlier.
And you've grown a beard since then. I assume that you're stronger and ready to fight the world. So good on you.
That was I think the song that I listened to. The song they've written for their fans.
They write a lot of songs for their fans, so that really doesn't narrow it down.
Okay, all right.
So it could be Warriors of the World. It could be Army of Immortals. It could be Blow Your Anyway, I'll stop now. But they do have a lot of fan service songs.
I hadn't really heard of them before. I
have.
Yeah. You seem to. I mean, I was reading your blog about you. You've been to quite a few of the. The book can go, right? So tell me about your obsession with Man of War.
Yeah. So there, for those who don't know, Man of War is an American heavy metal, like classic heavy metal band that has been around since the early 80s. They're still around, but the quality and quantity of their studio output has dropped off in recent decades. But they are a lot of their music is a message of personal empowerment couched in this hyper masculine warrior imagery. So like fighting the world every single day, right? It's like and when I was getting started in my IT career, so this is 1996. I'd gotten a job as a trainer in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So I was basically, my wife was working on her master's degree. So she is the smart, amazing one. I was basically along for the ride. And I fell into a job where I became a Microsoft certified trainer, like learning Windows NT4 and SQL 6.0 and all of the cutting edge technologies of the time. And it was very high pressure. And I was doing a lot of studying. So like reading for 8 hours a day, trying to learn all of the things that I needed to learn to teach classes on things that I had never done in the real world. So there's no pressure there, right? And at that time, I had gone to Circuit City, so like this now long defunct electronics and media retail chain in the U.S. And I had found Manowar's 1996 album Louder Than Hell. So the fact that they have an album called Louder Than Hell says a lot about the music. But it became this soundtrack of this period of my life. And I had been aware of the band, like I'd owned a couple of their older albums. I liked the music, but I didn't really care. It's like they were one of many. They weren't really special to me. But with that album, it was such this perfect fit. It was inspirational, it was motivational, it was empowering, and it's just this fantastic music as well. So it's like guitar and drums and bass and this amazing vocalist. So their singer, and one of the later albums he did a cover of Puccini's Nessun Dorma. So like amazing, powerful voice, great range, and so on. So I started buying the earlier albums and following them on tour. Originally you drive to the shows that were closer. Later on, you start flying to the shows. Later on, you're like, oh well, they're playing this show in Munich, and I've got to work. It's like on a weekend, but I'm working the week before and the week after. Maybe I can fly in, go to the show, and just fly back the next morning without ever, getting a hotel room or sleeping, like that sort of thing. And the first time you do it, you swear, I'm never going to do this again. And the third or fourth time, you still say that you're never going to do it, but you don't believe you anymore. But I've seen them probably close to 75 times, all across Europe, all across the US. I went to Japan to see them in 2 back-to-back shows back in 2014. In 2019, I saw them in Israel, across Norway, and in Svalbard, up in the Arctic Circle. Like they're like the northernmost heavy metal show in history, like that sort of thing. And it's this kind of like the Power BI community is really helpful, and you get to know the people that are, the regular contributors and the regular participants. I have friends in 100 countries that I've met both through the online Manowar fan community and I see it show after show after show, and it's wonderful. They're flawed human beings as well, so they have like some themes in the music that I am not a fan of, and some songs that I don't particularly like. But I have 3 Manowar tattoos. Like they recognize me when they see me in the crowd. One of the band members, we're in the airport together, like ran into each other at the airport. It's like, hey, you want to come out and hang out in the lounge with us? It's like, yes, yes, I do. so it's one of those things that has helped make me me. And sort of circling back to some of the themes from the beginning of the conversation, it's part of that authentic self that I can bring along with all of the other baggage that I've built up over the years, whether it's, the technical experience, the customer experience, the swords, the cooking, the kittens, the, whatever it is, it's me. And I'm blessed and fortunate to be in a place where I am appreciated for the nuance and complexity that I bring, and not just for the Power BI.
Oh, I mean, that's an amazing place to end the conversation, isn't it? I mean, that was much better than any question I could have come up with. Good God. I didn't even get on to Roche's maxim. We're gonna say
we did a session on there's a blog post. It's fine.
Yeah, people have to, and they have to listen very carefully because, if it's only true 99.44 times.
So you'd mentioned in our pre-conversation, you'd mentioned that. So back in the 70s and 80s, Ivory soap, which is like this like brand of bar soap in the US, their advertising campaign was Ivory soap. It's 99.44% pure, or like 99 and 44/100ths. I forget how they phrased it. So anytime that I use that in a tweet or other context, it's like this calling out to the other old folks in the conversation. There's no meaning. It's just the subtle 70s or 80s cultural reference.
I knew it was a callback to something. It was so specific that it wasn't, it couldn't have been an accident. Someone wants the link to Man of War. We can put that out later, or they can just search for Man o' War on the Googles, on the Bings.
Yep. So go to YouTube and search for Man o' War Kingdom Come. So if you're looking for one song that will give you the essence of Man o' War, like the pure, unadulterated, this is the first impression that you should have, Kingdom Come is that song. But because they are like the dinosaurs of the modern age, they aggressively take down any video of their music that shows up on YouTube that isn't like coming from them or their record label. So a very narrow slice that you would find from any progressive modern band. So there's a lot of stuff that you need to literally buy the physical CDs, which is kind of sad. But Kingdom Come, find it on YouTube as soon as this conversation is done.
All right. Well, you've heard it from Matthew. Thank you for your time. It's been great. And it's been an honor. I think that's all I can say is keep the shirt on, and thank you for staying dressed. Sorry. Did we mention, was that in the pre-show, or was that, I can't remember when we talked about that.
Let's just let people wonder in case we didn't mention it. That's the stories and the rumors are probably already circulating.
Yeah. And they will be far more interesting than reality. All
Absolutely.
All right. Take care, everybody. Thanks for watching. And Mark and Matthew in the morning.
Morning.